This is a class actually that I probably touched on over the years. You know, we never do the same class twice in here. So it's because the reason we don't is because we really build it around the volunteers, and there's always different volunteers. So even if I pick the same topic out and even ask the same questions, it's never the same class. But I never do ask the same questions because I always have something new that I'm thinking about. But I've been kind of just thinking about cultures and clashing, and we live in this world where certainly the U.S. is very much a multicultural land, and it's always been a multicultural land, and it's always been a land that, a nation that brings different cultures in, and we've never always been 100% open to integrating everybody into this nation, right? Like, we have this idea that, people should give up their language and give up their culture and become an American. But, that's really cool and that's nice, but you also got to welcome people in. And so it's like, we're going to become an American, but wait, you're Catholic from Hungary or Catholic from Italy? Well, no, you can't live in this neighborhood. You got to go live in that neighborhood over there. All sorts of things in that way. We have Jim Crow laws and Hispanics and that affected not only black people of Americans of African ancestry, but also Hispanics and Native Americans and Asians and some white people. And so, you're Jewish. No. We don't let Jews in this country club. We don't let Jews become part of our organization. Well, then how are people, we expect people to be welcomed in and give up who they are and give up their culture and give up their language when in fact it's not entirely a welcoming place. So we set these standards for people. So, we have this saying in the U.S., like the shoe has to be worn on both feet, so to speak. But we are very much this multicultural place where most people have an idea that, hey, it's different cultures can be a really positive thing. And, there's sort of pushback on that right now. There are a lot of folks that are, kind of questioning some of that, but mostly that's not going to last. This is a multicultural nation, and we are fundamentally going to embrace a multicultural ideology. And that's how it is. So can you go to the first slide here? We are, when I say this, it does mean that, this multiculturalism really plays out in people's lives. So, 1 in 5 adults, grew up, was raised in a multi-faith environment, interfaith, like two people, parents of different faiths. And 10% of people, of households in this nation are of mixed or multi-race. 10%, man. So there's this idea that that's a good thing, and again, there's some people that don't think it's a good thing, but those are minority voices, man. They are always going to be drowned out by the majority voice, which is that difference is good. And that's just how it is. And if you don't like that, well, then I guess you're in the wrong nation, because and I'm speaking also to people directly on the stream. That's what it is to be an American, is to embrace these cultures and have these cultures, and then also for everyone to kind of melt into this thing called Americanism. But that's a very complex word, because what it means to be American is to be lots and lots of different things. So, but what we sometimes don't talk about are the struggles that come with with multiculturalism and the challenges. Like, you have a household where different cultures are coming together. And this is not just here in the United States, but all over the world. You have a household where people come together with different religions, different ethnicities, different races, different culture. I mean, it can be very complex and very challenging. And so, there are a lot of challenges. And then there becomes a conflict because people see things differently. And the conflict, sometimes you just sort of live into it and it becomes a thing, it becomes part of life, but there are real serious challenges. And so I'm going to show you a couple, can you go to the next slide? Layla, next slide. So these are maybe you think about this, right? Mixed race adults. This is a lot of you in here in the United States. The highest rates of alcohol use disorder is how we talk about it. And binge drinking, man, highest rates of binge drinking. And illicit drug use and illicit drug addiction. So it's a lot of behaviors that are just difficult or problematic behaviors that are not genetic, but rather what we know and what we see is that they emerge out of the stresses. And so the field of sociology, what makes it really interesting is that we're not interested in any individual. Like if I could study mixed race people in this class 30 years ago, and then 29 years ago, and then 20, and then 15, and 10, and 5 years ago, and today, we're going to see the same kind of thing, that those of you Americans anyway who are mixed race have higher rates of struggle on these factors, which means there's something deeper that's going on in people's lives, which is really, man, that's why I study sociology, because it's interesting. What it tells me is that you say, this is the sociological imagination. I'm going to say this and then we're going to start the class. But, you're going to experience bro, that dude, you got to put your computer away, man. All right? We experience things as individuals. It's like, oh man, I got this problem of binge drinking and I can't, or I feel like I'm struggling with alcoholism, which many of you are, by the way. Many of you are. But what you should know is that, for college students, alcoholism rates, and alcoholism doesn't necessarily mean a lifetime thing, but can be high while you're in college, and it's lower for people who don't go to college. But then, you get out of college and you get in the workforce and it starts to decline, but people who didn't go to college, their rate starts to go up. But in any case, you might experience things as your own. It's your own personal trouble. But when you talk to a sociologist, we start looking at things to say, wait a minute, man, how is it that the rates of illicit drug use and addiction and binge drinking and so on are higher among people who are mixed race? It means that those of you who are mixed race, you think you're as in control as everybody else in the classroom, okay? But there's something else going on, which it's that something else that's really interesting. That's what makes me want to study sociology, because it's like the invisible strings of causality that shape us in ways that we don't understand. By the way, that idea right there, if you get that idea, it's just game changing. Okay, so let's have our volunteers up, and we here, you guys can come on up, man. Yeah. We're going to, this class, maybe more than any other class, I really want to hear, we want to hear from some of you who are not up here, okay? And we're talking, I'm going to introduce the volunteers, and I'm going to see if somebody else wants to come up, okay? Like we did the other day when Jackson came up. So why don't we start? And explain why you're up here, like, you know, your family, your background, and so on.
My name is Taylor Robertson. I'm from San Diego, California. I'm a first year studying journalism, and I'm half Filipino and half white.
Uh-huh. So the idea is, you know, by the way, the mixed race piece, when I was talking about those numbers, the higher rates of addiction and that kind of thing, that doesn't have anything to do with the three of you, right? Well, it might, actually, I don't know, but the idea is that we're going to have this conversation about your house. Yeah, what you saw. All right, man.
My name's Benjamin.
Wait, hold the mic closer.
My wife is Chinese, and we're actively going through the immigration process, and we've been doing this for about 3 years now, and it's getting a little tiring.
So when I asked the two of you, early in the semester when I had the idea of this class, I asked the two of you, hey, tell me about that. We're going to talk about this culture conflict or culture clash in your families. Like, do you see this with, you know, in your families? And both of you were like, oh, hell yeah, right? So that's how you got up here. And then, yeah, Rayanne.
My name is Rayanne. I'm an international politics major and history minor, and I'm half American, half Lebanese.
Half American, half Lebanese. Okay, and same thing. I think I asked you the same question.
Earlier in the semester, yeah.
Early in the semester, and you were like, yeah. You can just leave the mic on. It's fine. Tate, is there anyone else that that feels like, oh man, I feel like I could talk about my household. I have examples of places where there's like a certain kind of clashing of cultures. Anybody feel like, yeah, I could be up there? You, bro? What's that? No, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be about the United States either, man. You can be from anywhere. It doesn't matter. Do you want to? Anybody? Anybody feel like they want to join? Bro, wait. Hang on. You already volunteered, right? Oh, you never volunteered? No. Hey, what's your? Hang on. What's your background?
So I'm a Filipino, and I'm the child of like direct immigrants. So, like second gen, right? That's what it would be. And so like I was kind of raised with those like sort of American values I got from school, but their values as like Filipinos that came directly from the Philippines like really clashed with not just me but also my brothers. And so we really struggled with that.
Dude, all right, why don't you come up? That'll be a different thing. Why don't you? So you guys just stay on the table here. We'll sit on the table. Oh, you can't sit? Oh, dog. All right, here. Have a seat right here, man. Yeah. All right. All right. So, introduce yourself, man. And then, bro, whoever raised his hand, make sure that you say something later. Contribute. All right.
Hi, I'm Christian. I am a sophomore actuarial science major.
All right, cool. And you are Filipino.
Filipino.
But first gen. Or second gen, first gen.
Yeah, I'm like a second gen, so like the son of immigrants.
All right. All right, man. So listen. So we're gonna let's just start right. We'll start right here, and anybody can take this. So we said this a couple years ago, but can a couple of you say? Can you just say just be the two of you? What's the coolest thing about being mixed, being in this? Just a quick thing.
I would say, like, I understand a lot of different things from, like, both cultures, because both my parents, like, had to have different kind of, like, visions of how they were going to raise me based on, like, how they were raised separately. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I have a really good understanding of, like, both, like, how, like, American households function versus how, like, Filipino households do.
So you were raised, you have two childhoods.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
All right. Okay, that's kind of cool. That's very cool, actually. No, here, we're going to give it to Rayanne. We'll come back to you, bro. Christian. Can you give Christian a name tag?
I agree. I think I've really enjoyed, especially as I've gotten older, I've learned to enjoy the different aspects of American culture and Lebanese culture that I've been able to kind of they've become interwoven as part of my personality. I also lived in the UAE for most of my life, so their culture also kind of found its way in there.
Huh. All right. Okay, so listen, what have you experienced as the most notable conflict in your households or relationships, or what's the most notable conflict? I think from your personal experience.
I really want to say whatever drives them. Like Americans tend to be more laid back. My wife is like, don't stop. That your day's not over. You have a checklist, finish it.
So it's just it's being driven. Yeah.
Indubitably.
There's no rest for the weary.
No.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So one is feeling just this being pushed in a way that you feel like is really uniquely from Chinese culture. Does she feel like that?
No. She thinks that's normal.
Yeah, that's the key, man. That's the key right there. Yeah. Huh. How about somebody else? What's the most notable conflict?
I kind of agree with that because, like, from a Filipino's perspective, that's also something that was very instilled in me by my mom, was to be very driven about, like, your academics and, like, whatever else you're doing. And, like, I feel like I'm, like, a very driven person, like, and like mostly because of how I was raised, like on her side, was to be very like driven for stuff like that, and to just like go after like your academics and like stuff like that.
But where's the conflict enter in? Because then you have your dad's side. That is, where's the conflict start?
I would say like they've definitely disagreed on they both want me to get good grades, but there's definitely been a lot more conflicts with like how I interact with it, like with my mom versus like my dad, because both my parents like want me to get good grades, but it's a lot more of like a must for my mom versus like where my dad, I feel like he's a little more like laid back with that.
And so do you find yourself leaning on your dad and more, or your mom more at certain times? Is that?
I feel like when I'm getting like yelled at for my grades and stuff, I like to run to my dad. But honestly, like I am really grateful for my mom's like constant push to like be better and stuff like that.
And do they fight over that? Is that something they argue over? Or how much do they argue over it? Or has your dad just come to accept your mom? Like, bro, at some point you're just going to accept your wife. Yeah, I'm just going to have to work harder.
They've definitely, I would say, yeah, they've definitely had arguments about stuff like that. But my dad's also very like he lets it go. He's kind of just like whatever, like.
All right. Christian or Rayanne, how about you?
The first one that came to mind for me was me being able to be at Penn State in person, because I did the last 3 years online. Because my entire family's in the UAE. And so what would be considered normal to my white family, to the white side of my family, my mom's side, is absolutely bizarre to the dad side of my family, just being so far away from my family, especially being the youngest daughter.
Wait, did you have to talk them into coming here?
Absolutely, especially my dad, yeah.
Whoa.
Especially because, I mean, it never would have worked when I was 18, just because I was a kid, especially in their eyes. And in Arab culture, like you're still considered a kid at 18. You're not.
You're gonna live at home,
not like
man.
it's not like the U.S. where it's like, oh, you're 18, scoot.
You should know that in Arab cultures, are there any dormitories anywhere in Arab cultures at the universities? I don't think I've ever seen. There aren't very many
They
for
do,
international students, right?
Yeah, they do.
But not for Arab students.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just say being here, it was a big difference in norms, and that was interesting.
What else? Anything else? Or here, you think of something else. We'll go to Christian. And Ben, I'm going to come back to you also for a second go around.
I think from my parents, it was really about survival. in their heads, it was really about just kind of, like, they were always in survival mode, no matter what it was. It could be like the smallest of issues, the biggest of issues. And it was always stress, like what she was saying, the stress to succeed, because if you don't succeed, you won't survive. And so kind of coming to America, like when they came here, I don't think they've ever adapted to that. And so,
So they themselves haven't adapted to what it means to be here.
and that sort of affected how I was raised, because
Got
when I was
ya.
surrounded by like people who were just kind of chill and more just, they're like, yeah, like it's fine.
So you grew up as an American, right? They grew up as Filipino. So the conflict becomes you saying, hey, man, you, to your parents, you got to change how you are in the world. But you're not going to say that. You can't say that. So you have to. Yeah, so what's that? Like, say you're.
That
Like, you can't tell them to change because they're not going to change. First off, even if you convince them to, they won't be able to.
So here's the interesting part. I think my mom has kind of changed a little bit more to be more understanding of us, but like my father, more importantly, has not really done that. It's hard for him to kind of understand that, and like a lot of his paranoia sort of seeped into like what made me as a person. And so I think that like children of like immigrant parents might also feel that, where it's like their parents are also very much in the survival mode. And so I find it interesting that like I come here to Penn State and it's like, yeah, everyone's just pretty chill about it.
So because you're not in survival mode.
It's
Like it's not in your DNA here. It's different. You're born here, so you're in this American body. And so it's just very different, right? There's like a cultural DNA that's just not part of your reality in the same way.
yeah, it's not. I feel like I was sort of missing that for a lot of my life. I just never understood why they were so focused on just issues that didn't seem that large, or they would see things that I would
Yeah.
be upset about, and they'd be like, "That's nothing." And so
Right.
like, you kind of, it's a weird sort of conversation.
You know, this is one of the things that happens inside of immigrant families in particular. And again, not just here, but anywhere in the world, that you really don't see on the outside. You don't see like what it takes, man, what it takes to leave who you are, your place, where you are, who you are, what you are, and go and take that somewhere else and try to be different somewhere else. Like how to do that, what it means. It's like I have it because I've lived abroad in different countries, and man, I so often try not to be me, but I can't not be me. I'm going to do that. And so sometimes I just, like right now, when I spend a lot of time in Korea, and when I'm in Korea, I just lock myself down, and I just lock it down and don't let my personality be my personality. I just try to really shift it. Do you have another example, Ben?
I don't know how applicable this would be, but the self-imposed expectations. My wife is coming here for instance, my wife is coming here in a few months on her green card finally. But she picked up the show Friends, and she's realizing her English is not as good as she wanted it to be.
Yeah.
So now she's constantly judging herself to such an extreme level, and that's normal for her. And here I'm going, your English is fantastic.
And especially for someone of Chinese culture, so her judging her, she's going to judge herself much more harshly
Absolutely.
than say like Christian here would, or yeah. Okay.
She has a finance major. She'll be coming here for her bachelor's, for her master's in finance. So I do think that is kind of good, though. At least for that personality. I don't know many.
No, but it's a thing that you can't understand that. So you're telling her, hey, no, your English is fine, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Right. You're your own worst critic.
Yeah. In that way. That's an East Asian thing for sure. And does anyone else have another example of how this, like a clash that manifests itself? Do you? Why don't you two keep that microphone and you two keep that one.
One thing that's really prominent in my family is like the sense of community. So like Filipinos are very like family is number one, and like I think this goes with like a lot of other Asian cultures too, but it's very expected of you to like take care of your parents when you get older and to like be there. Whereas like I feel like on my dad's side, like they're still like they like love their family and everything, but there's also a big emphasis on like independence and like leaving the home once you're 18 and like going out to like do stuff, whereas like it was like it's been really hard for my mom, like me being at Penn State, like coming from California, because for her, like she wasn't used to that, like being that far away from family, whereas like my dad, like he still loves me, but he also like I don't think like that distance was that hard for him, because like for his family, like it was encouraged when he was 18 to like go out and like do his own thing.
Oh, that's so huge, man. That's just so huge that you. So for them, I can imagine the behind closed doors conversations and arguments that they had. We'll call it conversations all throughout your high school years about, you say, what's going to happen to you, and are you going to be, and how much freedom they're going to give you, and how much they're not going to give you. And in your case, taking 3 years just to convince them, hey, I can go do my senior year on the other side of the world.
That was the kicker. Senior year, I need the experience.
You need the experience? Oh, is that because it's going to get you a better job or make you more marketable?
It's going to get me a better job. I never got the college experience. I'm grown now. It's time.
Yeah.
So.
Oh,
and that level of independence, I think, is good for me.
Yeah.
I think he finally realized that towards the end of it. So. But absolutely the same situation that she talked about, like the different norms and the independence that the white side of my family expects me to have, or expected me to have at 18, moving out and getting a job and that sort of thing, and like making my way in the world and getting that grounding, that I didn't have those same expectations from my Arab side, because it's normal to stay with your family until marriage, really.
So how does that play out on your white side? Because the white side, do you experience a level of disappointment in them? That your parents that your dad in particular, your Arab family is like destroying these opportunities in you? They're like, come on, man, like you're really hurting her. It's like, do you?
I think because my dad spent so long living in the States, he's a lot less like rigid about these things.
Got
so
you.
he agrees with the level of independence, and that's why he's agreeing for me to come
That's why
here.
you got 1 year.
Exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
other people in my family, especially other girls in my family, that's not happening.
Wait, okay, you mean they're not going to come here?
Unlikely. Yeah. And my older sisters didn't get to study abroad either.
Yeah.
So I have 2 older sisters, and they wanted to, and it was a no-go. And then I won the lottery. So.
Man, that's because you're the youngest.
I'm the youngest daughter. I have a little
daughter?
brother.
Oh yeah, and your brother came abroad.
Oh, he's in high school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's so fascinating, right? And there's not a right and a wrong.
Right.
See, the problem of this is there's no right and wrong here. Doesn't matter. There's 2 different cultures, and each culture has its own place and has its own way and has its own, and in the context of that culture, it's perfect as it is. But when you bring the cultures together, then it changes things up. There's nothing wrong with being like, why do you need to go to the other side of the world and have the experience, man? Just stay home. This is your family. You got everything here. It doesn't really matter. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. So, it becomes, in the context by itself, it's not a problem. It's only a problem when you bring these other cultures together. Like if you're Chinese, bro, it's fine. You just work harder. Don't question it. You don't even question it. Just work harder. Don't stop your day at 8 o'clock or 6 or whenever you stop it, man. At 1 a.m. Yeah, exactly. It's not a problem, man. And you don't need to make any argument that your English is good enough. It's never good enough. It's never going to be good enough. You're never going to be smart enough. You're never going to be.
Learning is continuous, and that's really hard for some people to understand sometimes. You never stop learning, or you shut yourself off to new experiences.
And But how does your wife see that though? Does she ever? Is there ever an end point for her? Will it ever be good enough?
She told me to do my master's degree in 1 year so that I can finish my PhD before I'm 33. So
Why
no,
33?
it's never enough.
Why 33? Is that a
She just wants me to get a
lucky
job
number?
sooner
Oh, I
and get
got
out
you.
of student life sooner.
Dude, do not take up golf. All right. Even though Chinese love golf, don't take up golf.
I don't like golf.
Yeah, well, that's good because it'll waste way too much time.
It's expensive too.
And you'll get yelled at every time you come home for wasting your time. So, does anyone else? Christian? Do you have anything to add? We can go to our next question, but what's that?
You talking about how your wife feels like her English isn't good enough made me think about how I frequently feel and I'm told that my Arabic isn't good enough despite being half Arab. Just because I grew up speaking English at home, my dad did speak Arabic, and he's fluent, but the only, and take this with a grain of salt, but really the only kind of Arabic that I understand is the Lebanese dialect and also the kind of conversations you have at home. So like in terms of business Arabic or professional Arabic, I can't be like, yep, that's on the resume, because it's iffy.
Yeah.
So that's something.
So then you really did need to come to here to have this other cultural experience, right?
Yeah.
Because you can put that in the
working
place
on
of
it.
business Arabic on
Right.
the resume. You can put cultural
Right.
experience.
We're working on it though.
Yeah. Dude, I love it. Do you have something?
So like now that we're on like the topic of language and sort of the language barrier, I think that's something that's very important because someone who speaks fluent English but not Tagalog, the things that my parents speak, a lot of our gestures, a lot of what we're saying is very much different from how it comes off to them. And so for my mom, who has really tried to perfect their English and then also tried to understand more of like the development of like the English language and how we say things but they don't exactly mean what we're saying, they mean a different thing. She's gotten better at that, but my dad really struggled with that. So kind of the communication barrier between that and him not being able to understand like what I'm saying to him and him saying something to me and not understanding what he really means by that is kind of something that I would like to point out. It's a very big conflict, at least in my life, where there would be whole arguments or like misunderstandings based on just kind of like a phrase or something that's been said that like neither of us would have taken if we understood what the gesture or like the underlying tone or meaning was.
Yeah. Okay, let me ask you this. Are Filipinos, I don't know this about, I've been to the Philippines and I know lots and lots of Filipinos, but are Filipinos really direct when they talk, or are they more like Chinese? Are they very direct?
I think kind of depends on the time and place. Like, they can be very direct. Yeah, I'd say very direct sometimes.
Would you say that?
Yeah.
Yeah, very direct. That's my sense. But your wife's probably not direct though. Like you don't, or she maybe she is.
She is not. And it is extremely hard to understand some of her text messages sometimes.
Because she's going around.
Yeah.
Because part of Chinese culture is like you don't necessarily always say exactly what you mean. And the idea is like I shouldn't have to say it. I don't have to say it, but you sort of I just want to say enough to get you to see what I want you to see, but I don't have to go all the way.
I'm a very direct person, and if you don't spell it out for me, I'm going to miss it. And that is a really big issue I have.
With your wife?
Yes.
Yeah, totally, man.
Because she hates it when I'm going, what did you just say? I don't understand.
Yeah.
Getting that I can put myself in her shoes, getting that message multiple times a day, even then times a week, it probably gets frustrating and annoying.
Yeah. Well, it's a whole different way of communicating. You know, for example, I have these interactions with people in East Asia. And I think my way of communicating is to be very direct, just to say, okay, well, here's what I'm thinking. But you don't ever start with, here's what I'm thinking, man. You start with waiting for them to say something, and then you know that what they're saying is not what they actually think. So then you have to say, okay, hang on, that's not what you think. You're not going to tell me the truth of what you imagine to be true. And so now I have to say something that helps you, that opens the doorway for you to be able to say something that maybe will get you closer to saying what you actually
You
think.
have to be able to guide their thoughts.
Yeah, you guide their thoughts. And they have to be able to, and their expectation is that you don't have a problem doing that. Her expectation is like, why would you have a problem doing that? Just, we don't talk in these direct ways. So,
No.
yeah. Yeah. Huh. Do you see that? Do you see that at all with your parents, or are they very... Arabs are pretty direct, actually, so...
Not with my mom and dad, just because my dad has spent so long in the U.S. He like upwards of 20 years. So they communicate pretty effectively.
Yeah.
But there's a
Yo,
lot
that's
of,
important, man. If he didn't have that, I think
Oh,
that's
yeah.
just really
Absolutely.
valuable.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Also, I don't think they would have like found each other if my dad wasn't in the U.S. Like my mom's from Tampa, so
Oh, yeah. Also, you seem very American in your gestures.
yeah.
Like, do you get that? Like, do you see that with her? You just feel very American.
I mean, it depends on where I am and who's around me. And leading up to this class, I was actually thinking about this, and I realized that I don't have as solid of a personality as an Arab, because I think I spend so long doing the like mechanical translation when I'm having a conversation with somebody.
So when you're with your dad,
Yeah.
is your personality? I'm going to ask you the same question. How different is your personality than when you're with your mom?
I think Arabic can be very playful.
Okay.
And I think that comes out with my dad sometimes, especially when he's in a good mood.
And then how
it's a
about just gestures and the way you sit, the way you walk, the way you talk, the way you...
I think, and this is a very correct stereotype, but just hands flailing, just a lot of like
Yeah.
outwardly expressive. They're very expressive people.
So do you find yourself doing that differently when with your dad than with your mom?
Yeah, but also my mom, she speaks
become-
Arabic. Yeah,
yeah,
she's
yeah.
adjusted very very
She's-
well.
Yeah, yeah.
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 So so I feel like it's essentially we're like a hybrid people. Sounds
Yeah,
so dramatic,
got
but
you.
there's like a balance to it. So both of my parents kind of are half American, half Arab in a sense because they just
Yeah.
flow like that.
Yeah, that's cool. Oh, that's
Whereas when I'm with my Arab side of the family, I think I almost mirror them rather than be an Arab part of myself.
cool. Yeah, yeah.
So
That's what I try to do.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, that's
Yeah.
what I try to do when I'm in Korea.
yeah, okay.
But it's hard, man.
Mhm.
It's really, really hard.
It gets taxing.
Luckily, if people watch me in here, they see that I'm very outgoing, but I can't. So what'll happen sometimes, I'll give a talk or I'll do something like this. Even I'll give a talk where I bring people up on stage, but I can't do it in the way that I do it here.
Right.
I have to be, I'm much more reserved. I hold back a lot.
Yeah.
I don't allow myself, because people say they want that, but they don't really want it. They,
Right.
it's too strange for them.
Yeah. I think also the Arab part of myself kind of gives me an opportunity to be louder and more expressive than English, because I feel like there's a lot of different ways I present myself when I'm being an American and I'm speaking English. It's the way that I present myself to strangers typically is I'll just
Yeah.
say I'm American, and then if we have a longer conversation, we can get into the nitty-gritty of where I'm from and where I was raised. Whereas when I'm speaking Arabic, I'm typically with people that I'm comfortable with, and so there's a
Yeah.
lot more drama to
yeah,
the way
yeah,
that
yeah.
I function.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, can I ask you? That's cool, by the way. That's actually really interesting. Do you have that? Like, are you different when you're around your mom than when you're around your dad, or how different are you?
I would say, like, culturally, like, I mean, when I'm with like my mom, we go get Filipino food because my dad doesn't like it that much. But I feel like my mom's pretty Americanized because when she immigrated here, she was 7 years old. So she grew up in like a Filipino like household, but she like went to school with like at an American school. Like,
So that's good for you. And like, so you didn't have the clash that you could have.
yeah,
had.
I guess so. I mean, there's still definitely a lot of stuff that like in Filipino households like really like sticks. Like I said before, like the community aspect of like you like you're expected to like take care of your elders, and like you're like very like the language part is very like hierarchy too. So like typically in the Philippines, like you don't refer to your older siblings by like their names. Like you refer to them as like if it's an older sister, you call her ate, or like if it's your older brother, you call him kuya, or like if it's an older like cousins as well, you use the same like names. Or like I noticed too, like for like my like family friends who are also Filipino, like I call the moms like auntie, like I'll say like auntie so and so, whereas like on my white side, like if we have like white family friends, like I just call the mom by their first name.
You just learn
Like
to
it
do
just
that.
feels weird to like call my Filipino family friends like they're like my aunties like by their first name.
Okay, say quick question. So when you say that you're really expected to take care of your parents, Filipinos are expected to take care of their parents, right, bro? So you're living with that. You're just like going to be taking care of your parents. But wait, but for you only got to take care of your mom. Your dad's on his own. You know what I mean? Like, sorry, Dad, you got to go make it work for yourself, you know. Do you have that? Do you live with that? Like you're
I think that my parents have adapted a lot of like the American ways, so they understand like what a 401k is and like how to retire themselves. But I think the expectation is that I still will come visit them, I still will come spend time with them, and like you said, like a lot of that traditional sort of family values. And I think that's something that like really highlight about Filipino culture. It's very family oriented, and I really like that about it sometimes.
How much did you struggle with this when you were, say, in high school, when you were younger, because your friends saw it? Did you grow up in a Filipino community?
No.
Okay, so how much did you struggle with this when you were younger? Because your friends didn't understand your relationship with your parents and so on.
A lot. I think that they didn't see the sort of things that I saw when I was speaking with my parents. A lot of my friends were primarily white, so they got to kind of they had a lot of freedom. And so I was sometimes envious of that freedom, but eventually when I did get that freedom, we felt pretty equal. So it was just, you know.
Huh. I'm going to ask you a question in a second.
Too, like that, like I had like a similar experience of like I noticed like compared to a lot of my other friends, like growing up, I feel like sometimes I didn't have like as much freedom as they did, and it was like one of those things I struggled with as a kid, because it was like a lot of people would be like, oh, like I'm allowed to like get like social media, or like I'm allowed to do like other stuff like that, and for me that was like a very like no-go until like almost like high school. So
Yeah. Get an iPhone, right? Bro, the question that I asked about what the core struggle looks like in the household, do you have an answer? Do you have an answer to that question? You can just hop up really fast. I'm curious. And bro, if you have an answer to that question also, I'd be curious to hear. What's your story? Your wife is Mexican.
Yeah, I'm David. I was up here a couple weeks ago about the broken family stuff. My wife is Mexican, first generation. Parents jumped over here, had her, so that way she was a citizen kind of deal. And, we've been together for about 10 years now. And that communalism and the communication, I think, are like the biggest things. It was the biggest struggle for you. Oh, it was huge struggle for the first about 5 years. Like miscommunications back and forth because of not like language barriers, but like cultural differences in the ways that you would say things. So like she would say something a certain way and expect something from me. I would not understand that, and vice versa. And then
not because of the language barrier, but because you don't even imagine what it is that she's asking.
Yeah. Actually, at a point, I I pointed out to her at one point, I was like, you know, you surprisingly don't have like a really strong Hispanic accent for like speaking Spanish your whole life is like, that was pretty much it. But she does have these weird like kind of like affectations, I guess you could say, for the way that she would say things. So she, like when she would be addressing her brother, she'd say, "Hey, where's my mom?" And I was like, "Your mom? What about his mom?
Yeah.
Who's his mom?" Yeah, like small things like that, and that kind of like branched into our relationship, and it created a lot of divides and things. And then the communalism, same thing. I mean, that was a huge problem moving her across the country because also from California,
Yeah.
you know, and being 3,000
dude,
miles
you
away.
can't, you can't move her. To move her across the country, she might as well have been going to the other dark side of the moon, man.
Yeah,
know what I mean?
It was a huge problem. Yeah, she was crying a lot about it. She's like, "I want to go see my mom. You know, I'll just take a flight over there real quick." And I was like, "Okay, yeah."
Yeah, right. This isn't for 1 year of college either, you know? Huh. Hey, does anybody, bro, anyone have anything? It's such an interesting question, man. Does anyone else have something they would? Bro.
I have a question.
Wait, go ahead. Yeah.
I guess this is directed towards Ben, but any white person in an interracial relationship could maybe answer. How do you begin to navigate and begin to accept the fact that your wife may experience things that you never will experience, or like feel things related to her culture in the States that you will never experience as a white man? How do you go about navigating that? And
someone who grows up white, right here. How often do you think about that? I mean, she hasn't been here. She's never lived here, right? She's
Correct. She's never been here into the U.S.
So she has
for a
no
minute.
idea what she's gonna
No.
experience. How much are you thinking about that?
Constantly, because it's always, what am I missing, and what is her culture shock going to be? You can ask everybody. You can ask the Chinese visa students. You can ask other Asian students.
You can watch YouTube videos.
Exactly, and you can just like get as much information as you can. But there's always that one little thing that you never found that she's gonna judge you on.
Yeah.
But
or that you just won't see.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It'll be so minute,
Yeah.
so small. You'll be like, what? How?
But can be really big.
Yes.
That's the nature of it.
In any relationship, it is always communicate. They're your other half, and you're their other half. So if you can break it down to simple things like finances, lifestyle choices, and get on an equal footing of some understanding,
Yeah.
you have a good basis to work off of, and then it's communicate from there. I can't read your mind. You can't read mine.
Yeah, but here, I just want to say something. It's not equal footing because this is the nature of these cross-cultural engagements. It's different footing. It can never be equal. And as much as you want it to be, I hear what you're saying.
I think I said it wrong, but like, you know, on an equal understanding. Like, we understand this is all.
No, I got you.
Yeah,
but
okay,
that's
okay.
the nature of it. That's part
Yes.
of why these relationships and connections and families become so difficult, because you think it's going to be easier than it is, and it's not, man. It's just so incredibly difficult, you know? Yeah.
Did that answer your question?
Kind of. I guess I asked it in an attempt to tie it into the language conversation that we were having previously, just because the way we were talking about it, I heard a lot of like, oh, she doesn't believe her English is good enough, but it is good enough. It's a fact that it won't really be good enough here because, you know, coming as an immigrant, speaking a certain language, needing to learn English, there's always going to be an expectation of, oh, it could be better. You could say this better. You could express yourself better. And people may not know how smart someone is in their own language because they don't speak English very well. So does that make sense? I was kind of thinking of it in relation to the language.
There's other ways to get that information from your significant other. It's not only the language, it's how they act, how they do math, how they make choices and decisions.
Yeah.
language isn't the only thing you have. You have the five senses, and then personalities.
Yeah, and so what I would say is like, yeah, but that's life. You know, if you move from Florida, from California to Florida or whatever, that's the nature of life. And you have the up and the down, the good and the bad. But it is something that you're going to think about. Like you're going to think about as much as you've been thinking about it. How's your Spanish, by the way?
So, I mean, it was really good. Stopped speaking it for a while, and it's getting better now with us raising our son. We're making him speak Spanish first, and then English. Mm-hmm. So it's getting better. It's mostly like the Mexican Spanish, like the small little differences and little verbiages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, by the way, the more pushing Spanish on your son more than English, a lot of immigrants have this idea that that's a bad idea because they won't learn English good enough. It's like the exact opposite, man. Force the English, force the Spanish or force the other language because they're going to learn English fluent. They're going to speak without an accent. They're going to speak fluently. Wait. Yeah, go ahead, man. Mazen.
Test, hello. Okay. This question based off of what you said, and that's how I think many of us face it as international students, of wanting to confine your personality to feel connected with the people. Or like when you're coming to America, you said when you go to Korea, is there an echo? Or am I just, okay. When you go to Korea, you confine yourself or your personality, you hold yourself limited. And I want to know, what are your thoughts on that? Should we be doing that, or should we be allowing our cultures to clash? Is there a benefit in letting that happen?
Yo, man, that's a really good question. I'm going to answer that question after I give it to Rayanne first. How much do you think the culture clash, to what degree is it a really good thing? It's cool, like let the clash happen. And how much do you feel like it's really good if people sort of shift who they are and, just adapt more, like deny certain parts of themselves and adapt more? Like, what have you seen in your family, for example?
I think it depends on how okay a person is with confrontation. If you want to get along with a bigger crowd, then you're going to want to confine yourself to a certain personality that the entire crowd is going to like. But if you want to find your people, then I think it's okay to let that clash happen, so long as you're willing to defend it calmly and respectfully. I'd say if you're a tourist in certain cultures, then read up on the cultures and just don't be a schmuck, because you don't have to, you learn certain words, learn how to say please, thank you, learn manners. I think manners is really important, and that's a big thing with
you don't have
Arab
to learn
culture.
any words. Just don't be a schmuck.
Don't be a schmuck. just learn the basics, I think, and be respectful. But so long as you're being respectful, I don't think there's any issue with clash, because clash can allow people to make proper connections.
Yeah. Hey, Mazen, do you know the word schmuck? What is that? What's that in Arabic? Is there an Arabic word for
geez, you're
schmuck?
asking me? I don't know. I'd say the closest thing is like hamad, but that's donkey.
Yeah,
but it's used in the same
Okay, that's
sense of
good
like,
enough.
don't be a moron, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, in
Similarly.
Australia. Wait, where's our Australian guy? Here. Dude, it would be a wanker, So a wanker, a schmuck.
A wanker. You gotta cut off that.
Bro, did anybody else have? Wait, hang on. Yeah. All right. I turned it on. Yeah.
So my question might be more for Christian, but if anyone else can answer it, that's fine too. I'm also a first-generation Dominican American, so I kind of have some similar ways of living experiences that you have. But is there anything in particular, specific instances that you noticed growing up that kind of affected you that were different from your, the American culture versus your Filipino culture? And an example of this would be for me, when I was younger, my mom was so go, always working and everything. So I already knew not to expect her like at trips or like at sports events. Whereas that in American culture is so big, and you see parents always showing up for their kids at trips, at sports, but that's not really something that was as big in my culture. And that kind of sometimes made me feel like, oh, like maybe my mom should be doing this, but I know she can't. Like, do you have any experiences or like even where you see that translate into your adult life?
I think I can kind of directly relate with that. My father always worked long hours, and he was always working hard to provide for our family. And so a lot of myself kind of didn't like see that as a kid. And so growing up, it was like a big clash for me. And kind of now that I'm like at that age now where I'm becoming an adult, I really hate to say it, but he was right. I just didn't see it because I wasn't old enough. And now that I'm there, it's like, wow, like I get that he didn't maybe provide for me as much emotionally, like being there physically. Sometimes he tried, like he was there, like a lot of the times, but sometimes he wasn't. But like he was there to provide. He provided for our family.
Dude, it's intense, man. This is like this is one of the immigration story everywhere in the world. It's the immigration story, huh? Bro, do you have anything you would add to that question? By the way, the guy that a long time ago raised your hand. Do you have anything? Okay. Wait, let me. Oye, ¿cómo te llamas?
Ada lady. So
La lady, yeah, del otro día. Okay, yeah. I'm being asked what your name is, by the way. All right.
How do you feel about Americanized versions of like your cultures outside of America?
Wait, ask that again.
How do you feel about Americanized versions of like your other culture?
Yeah. Here. Yeah. Go ahead.
In not Osaka, Okinawa, Japan, there's a little town called American Town just outside of Kadena Air Force Base.
Wait, it's called America Town?
Yes.
Yeah.
It is what the Japanese people think America is like. It is the craziest thing, and it's fantastic. If that happened here, it would be cultural appropriation.
Yeah.
I walked through it, and I'm like, oh, dude, this is great.
You mean if we had
something similar to that, yes.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. No, people would in our DEI culture of critiquing these matters, we would be like, we would say, you can't do that. That's racist.
And it's so fun to be on the like mimicked side.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, this is great.
And is it on point?
No.
Right.
No.
Yeah. Okay, well, here's a good question then from Kenji from KC, Kansas City. Like, when cultures clash, so how do we distinguish between genuine cultural preservation and resistance to social change? Dude, can I ask you, do you have an answer to that question? In your family? Do you have an answer to that, by the way?
Yeah, my wife and I, we before having our son, we talked a lot about like what pieces of each one of our cultures we'd kind of like be willing to implement into the child. And sounds like an object when I say it like that.
No, that's all right.
But,
wait, aren't you an engineer?
No, I'm a physics major.
Oh, okay. Well, that's perfect for a physics major.
Yeah.
Go for it. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we kind of like picked and choose like individual pieces. And I don't know, at the end of the day, I just feel like it's kind of like up to you. If you feel like you're giving up a piece of yourself, then it's probably not the part that you want to give away. But if you feel like, hey, like this is actually like me fitting in more or like going into the norm, maybe that is the way to go. So it's kind of like you have to look at each individual situation, each part as its own thing that you need to assess.
So the two of you probably experienced that. There are certain parts of your families where that you're like, I'm going to take this on, I'm going to have to adapt this, and other things that you were able to not make part of you?
Yeah, I guess I like kind of want to add that like I don't necessarily think of it as like my parents are losing their identity on either side. I mean, I'm sure like with each other there's stuff that they've had to compromise and sacrifice.
Yeah, for sure.
But like I guess like looking at like how like my own relationship could be, I don't think of it necessarily as like I'm losing my identity.
Yeah. No. You're gonna gain no matter what.
Yeah.
You're just picking from lots of different pieces. Huh.
Yeah.
But progress. But for your parents, though, here, let me ask you: progress versus loss of identity. So your parents they're going to experience both things. Progress is the more you integrate into a new culture, the more successfully you integrate, the better off you're going to be. But you're going to lose part of your old identity. You become something new, which is there's nothing wrong with that. But you must see that. To what degree do your parents see that?
I think that my mom really saw that. I think that we kind of all agree that change is inevitable. Like you'll never escape change. And so kind of taking the good with the bad, being able to connect not only with like my own culture, kind of something that I've sort of journeyed with throughout this year, and then also understand that like I am an American.
Do they see you as an American?
Yeah, actually it was...
Do they see you as 100% American? And when you bring your white friends over, when you brought your white friends over to your house, to what degree is that an example of, hey, we've succeeded because our son Christian has integrated into America, into the U.S.?
I think they're very...
Not just white friends, but American friends who are not Filipino.
I think they're very proud of that, because I get to, like, they just love to see that I'm happy. They love to see that I can enjoy my life. And like it gets sort of weird now when you think about like me having like a girlfriend and things like that, and then going over to her side and being able to like experience her culture as well, which is also like more
a girlfriend who's not Filipino.
Yeah. Now that's even deeper because she's actually adopted Chinese into a white family. So then you got like the complexities of there, like both of us kind of struggling with our like cultural identities and kind of trying to find like connect back with our culture, but also like maintain being American.
Oh, dude, they get someone from China who's not Chinese. Like, life. Hey, do you have another question from the stream really fast, and then we'll cut? Do we have another one? Do mixed race people feel a lack of belonging? I'm just going to ask you, the two of you really fast. Do you feel a lack of belonging? Do people, because you don't belong to one group or the other?
I will say, like, being in both sides of the family, like, I've heard a lot of, like, I have heard a lot of, like, oh, like, you're not, like Filipino enough, or, like, I've heard a lot of, like, I've also heard, like, you're not white enough. I feel like I've definitely, like, heard from both sides. Like, I feel like where I grew up, I grew up around like a lot of Asians, and it was very like a lot of people would be like, I didn't even know you were Asian, or like I thought you were just white. But then like being here has been a big culture shock, because a lot of white people here like look at me and they're like, oh, you do look like you're Asian, or you look like you're mixed with something. And so I feel like that's like a difference in like where I grew up, I guess.
Okay, that makes sense actually. Do you have an answer to that question?
My answer is this is a lot to fit into a few minutes of class.
Yeah, go ahead.
I absolutely hated being from two different places as a kid, especially living in a country where I wasn't living in either of the places that I was from. So that was a new culture to adopt. And then also figuring out what I was, because it was frequently, to the Arabs, I was the American, and to the Americans, I was the Arab. So I think just finding that middle ground, and I saw something on the stream earlier, one of the questions about what does identity mean to you, and I think it's just finding that balance of what works for you specifically. So I think I typically, because I can express myself in English a lot better than Arabic, I lean more American, but there's a lot of cultural and like manners and aspects of the Arab world that I've fit into myself.
Yeah, that's very cool. It'd be interesting to have this same conversation in an Arab space to see how you would shift.
Yeah. Ooh.
Dude, hey, round of applause for you guys. Thanks. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank